The rain hammered against the cracked pavement with a violence that seemed personal, each drop striking the asphalt like tiny fists demanding attention. In the heart of Chicago's financial district, where steel and glass towers pierced the gray October sky, most people hurried past with umbrellas and designer coats, their eyes fixed on smartphones and their minds occupied with million-dollar deals. But sometimes, in the most unlikely places, destiny chooses to write its most extraordinary chapters. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Wellington had built his empire from nothing, transforming a single food truck into a network of restaurants that spanned 3 continents. At 42, his net worth exceeded most small nations' GDP, yet he walked the streets of Chicago with the same measured pace he'd maintained since his days sleeping in shelters. Today, however, something felt different about his usual evening. Stroll from the office to his penthouse apartment. The storm had caught everyone off guard, turning the orderly business district into a chaotic maze of honking cars and cursing pedestrians. Marcus had dismissed his driver hours ago, preferring to walk despite the weather forecast. There was something about the rain that reminded him of his childhood, of nights when he and his sister would press their faces against the window of their cramped apartment, watching the water streak down the glass while their mother worked her third job of the day. As he rounded the corner of LaSalle Street, his Italian leather shoes splashing through puddles that reflected the neon signs of nearby restaurants, Marcus noticed her. She was huddled beneath the narrow overhang of a closed boutique, her small frame pressed against the glass door as if she could somehow disappear into it. What struck him first wasn't her youth, though she couldn't have been more than 16, or even the way the rain had plastered her dark hair against her pale cheeks. It was her dress. The fabric, once probably a cheerful shade of blue, hung from her thin shoulders in tatters. A long tear ran from the hem nearly to her waist, exposing a glimpse of worn denim shorts underneath. Another rip across the bodice had been hastily pinned together with what looked like a safety pin from a convenience store. The sleeves were completely gone, leaving raw, frayed edges that spoke of violence rather than fashion. But it was her feet that made Marcus slow his pace to a complete stop. She was barefoot on the cold concrete, her toes curled against the chill, small cuts visible on her soles where she'd obviously walked farther than anyone should walk without shoes. In her arms, she clutched a garbage bag that seemed to contain everything she owned, the plastic stretched thin and threatening to tear under the weight of whatever meager possessions lay inside. Marcus had seen poverty before, had lived it, breathed it, and clawed his way out of it. But something about this girl's posture, the way she held herself with a dignity that her circumstances couldn't diminish, reminded him of someone he'd lost long ago. She wasn't begging, wasn't holding a sign or a cup. She was simply existing in a space too small for existence, trying to become invisible in a world that had clearly already forgotten she existed. The businessman in Marcus told him to keep walking. He had a conference call with Tokyo in 20 minutes, a merger to finalize, stock prices to monitor. The rain was getting heavier, and his $5,000 suit was already beginning to suffer. But the child in Marcus, the one who remembered what it felt like to be hungry and afraid and utterly alone, planted his feet firmly on the sidewalk. He approached slowly, the way someone might approach a wounded animal, aware that sudden movements could cause more harm than help. As he drew closer, he could see that she was shivering, not just from the cold, but from something deeper, something that had nothing to do with the weather. Her eyes, when she finally looked up at him, were the color of storm clouds, gray and turbulent, and filled with a wariness that belonged on someone 3 times her age. "Excuse me," Marcus said softly, his voice barely audible over the drumming. "Rain, are you all right?" The girl's grip tightened on her garbage bag, and for a moment Marcus thought she might bolt. Her eyes darted left and right, calculating escape routes with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned that survival often depended on the ability to disappear quickly. When she spoke, her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't used it in days. "I'm fine," she whispered, but the words carried no conviction. They were the automatic response of someone who had learned that admitting vulnerability was often more dangerous than enduring it. Marcus crouched down, bringing himself to her eye level, careful to maintain enough distance that she wouldn't feel trapped. Up close, he could see the full extent of her situation. The tears in her dress weren't accidental. They were defensive, torn perhaps in an escape or a struggle. Her knuckles were scraped raw, and there was a fading bruise along her jawline that makeup might have hidden if she'd had access to any. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She hesitated, studying his face with an intensity that seemed to look straight through to his soul. Whatever she saw there must have passed some internal test, because her shoulders relaxed slightly. "Elena," she said finally. "Elena Rodriguez." Marcus nodded, filing the name away carefully. "Elena, I'm Marcus. And I think we both know you're not fine." Nobody's fine when they're standing barefoot in the rain wearing a dress that's seen better days. A ghost of a smile flickered across Elena's face before disappearing again. "You don't know anything about me." "You're right," Marcus admitted. "But I know what it's like to be 16 and scared and trying to figure out how to survive the next 24 hours. I know what it's like to choose between eating and having a place to sleep. And I know what it's like to stand in the rain and wonder if anyone in the world gives a damn whether you live or die." Elena's eyes widened slightly, and Marcus saw something shift behind them. Recognition, perhaps, or the first tentative stirring of hope. "How old are you really?" Marcus asked. 15, she admitted quietly. "I'll be 16 next month. If I make it to next month." The casual way she mentioned her own mortality hit Marcus like a physical blow. He thought of his sister Carmen, who had been exactly Elena's age when the world had failed her so completely that she decided she couldn't bear to be part of it anymore. The memory of finding her in their childhood bedroom, still and silent, and forever beyond his reach, was something Marcus carried with him every day like a stone in his chest. "What happened to your dress?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Elena's jaw tightened, and for a moment Marcus thought she wouldn't respond. When she did, her voice was flat, emotionless, the tone of someone who had learned to disconnect from her own pain in order to survive it. "My stepfather decided I was old enough to contribute to the household in ways that didn't involve cleaning or cooking," she said. "My mother decided she'd rather keep him around than believe me. So I decided I'd rather take my chances on the street than wait to see what other contributions he had in mind." Marcus felt a rage building in his chest that surprised him with its intensity. He had learned long ago to control his emotions, to channel anger into productivity, to transform pain into profit. But something about Elena's matter-of-fact delivery of such horrific circumstances bypassed all his carefully constructed defenses. "How long have you been on the street?" he asked. "For days," Elena replied. "Maybe 5. Time gets weird when you don't have anywhere to be." Marcus did quick mental calculations. 4 days without proper shelter, food, or safety. For days of a 15-year-old girl navigating one of America's largest cities with nothing but the clothes on her back and whatever was in that garbage bag. For days.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story.
Of avoiding predators, finding food, seeking shelter, staying alive through sheer force of will. "Have you eaten today?" he asked. Elena's stomach answered before she could, growling loudly enough to be heard over the rain. She pressed her hand against her abdomen as if she could silence it through sheer embarrassment. "I had part of a sandwich someone threw away," she said. "It was only a little moldy." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, fighting back memories of his own childhood hunger, of the way an empty stomach could make you dizzy and desperate and willing to compromise your dignity for just a few bites of something edible. When he opened them again, his decision was made. "Elena," he said, "I'm going to ask you to trust me, which I know is probably the last thing you want to do right now. But I'd like to help you. Not because I want something from you, not because I have an agenda, but because I was once exactly where you are now, and someone helped me when I needed it most. Elena studied his face again, her gray eyes searching for deception or hidden motives. Marcus waited patiently, understanding that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford to give easily. "What kind of help?" she asked finally. "The kind that starts with getting you out of this rain and into some dry clothes," Marcus said. "The kind that includes a hot meal and a safe place to sleep. The kind that doesn't come with strings or conditions or expectations." Elena's grip on her garbage bag loosened slightly, but her posture remained defensive. "Why would you do that? You don't even know me." Marcus smiled, and for the first time all week, it felt genuine. "Because 15 years ago, I was sleeping in Grant Park with everything I owned in a backpack that smelled like the dumpster I'd found it in. Because a stranger named Mrs. Chun saw me digging through the trash behind her restaurant, and instead of calling the cops, she brought me inside and fed me the best meal I'd had in months. Because she didn't ask questions or demand explanations or try to fix my entire life in one conversation. She just saw a kid who needed help and decided to help." Elena's eyes filled with tears that she quickly blinked away. "What happened to her, Mrs. Chun?" "She became like a second mother to me," Marcus said. "She taught me how to cook, how to balance books, how to treat employees like family. When I opened my first restaurant, I named it after her. When I started my foundation, I made her the first board member. She's 78 now and still comes to work every day, not because she has to, but because she says retirement is for people who never found their passion." The rain was beginning to ease slightly, though both Marcus and Elena were thoroughly soaked. Marcus could feel the expensive fabric of his suit clinging uncomfortably to his skin, but he didn't move, didn't suggest they seek better shelter. This conversation felt too important to interrupt, too fragile to risk by changing locations. "I don't understand," Elena said. "If you were homeless, how did you get? I mean, you're obviously not homeless now." Marcus glanced down at his ruined suit and laughed. "No, definitely not homeless now. Mrs. Chun gave me a job washing dishes in her restaurant. I worked 16-hour days, saved every penny, learned everything I could about the food industry. When I had enough saved, I bought a food truck. When that succeeded, I bought another. When I had 3 trucks, I opened my first brick-and-mortar location. Today I own restaurants in 47 cities across 3 continents." Elena's eyes widened. "You own restaurants? Like more than one?" "More than one," Marcus confirmed with another smile. "But that's not why I'm standing here in the rain talking to you. I'm here because I remember what it felt like to be hungry and scared and convinced that the world had forgotten I existed. I'm here because I made a promise to myself that if I ever had the power to help someone in the same situation, I would." Elena was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. Marcus could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing risks against possibilities, survival instincts against the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this stranger was telling the truth. "What do you want in return?" she asked finally. The question broke Marcus's heart a little bit more. The fact that a 15-year-old girl had been conditioned to believe that kindness always came with a price spoke volumes about what her short life had taught her about human nature. "Nothing," he said simply. "Absolutely nothing except the satisfaction of knowing that someone who needs help is getting it." Elena stared at him for what felt like an eternity. Marcus could see her internal struggle playing out across her features. The battle between desperate need and hard-learned caution. Finally, she spoke. "Okay," she whispered. "But if you try anything weird, I'll run. And I'm fast." Marcus nodded solemnly. "If I try anything weird, you should definitely run. But I promise you, Elena, the only thing I'm going to try is helping you figure out what comes next." He stood slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might spook her. "There's a hotel about 2 blocks from here. They know me. They'll give us a suite without asking questions. You can have your own room, your own bathroom, room service, whatever you need. We'll get you some clothes that fit, shoes that actually protect your feet, and then we'll sit down and figure out how to make sure you never have to sleep in the rain again." Elena struggled to her feet, wincing as she put weight on her cut and bruised soles. Marcus noticed immediately and stepped toward her, but she waved him off. "I can walk," she said with a stubborn independence that reminded Marcus so much of his sister it took his breath away. They made their way slowly down the sidewalk, Elena limping slightly, but maintaining her dignity with every step. Marcus matched her pace, resisting the urge to offer support that hadn't been requested. He understood that for someone who had been stripped of control over every aspect of her life, maintaining autonomy over small things like walking became crucially important. The Fairmont Chicago rose before them like a beacon of warmth and safety, its golden lights spilling onto the wet pavement in welcoming pools. Marcus had stayed here dozens of times, had hosted business dinners in their private dining rooms, had closed deals worth millions in their conference suites. But he had never appreciated its simple luxury quite as much as he did now, seeing it through Elena's eyes. The doorman, resplendent in his burgundy uniform, moved to open the heavy glass doors without batting an eye at their bedraggled appearance. Marcus made a mental note to send the man's supervisor a note about his professionalism. Too many hotels trained their staff to judge guests by their appearance, to make assumptions about who belonged and who didn't. The lobby was a study in understated elegance, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of quiet luxury that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. Elena stopped just inside the entrance, her garbage bag clutched tightly against her chest, her eyes wide as she took in her surroundings. "I can't be here," she whispered. "Look at me. Look at this place. I don't belong here." Marcus turned to face her, his expression gentle but firm. "Elena, listen to me very carefully. You belong anywhere I say you belong. You belong anywhere any human being belongs. The only difference between you and anyone else in this lobby is circumstances, and circumstances can change in the blink of an eye." He gestured to the well-dressed guests moving through the lobby, business travelers and tourists and couples on romantic getaways. Half of these people are one bad investment away from losing everything. A quarter of them are drowning in debt they can't afford. Some of them are probably just as lonely and scared as you are. They're just better at hiding it behind expensive clothes and fake smiles. Elena looked around the lobby again, this time with different eyes. Marcus could see her processing his words, beginning to understand that wealth and security were often more fragile than they appeared. "Besides," Marcus added with a grin, "I'm paying for the room, and I'm pretty sure they'll take my money regardless of what you're wearing." The check-in process was smooth and efficient, the desk clerk treating Elena with the same courtesy she would have shown any guest. Marcus requested a two-bedroom suite on a high floor, far from the noise of the street and with views of the lake. He also quietly arranged for the hotel's boutique to remain open late and for their personal shopping service to be made available. As they rode the elevator to the 32nd floor, Elena stood in the corner, still clutching her garbage bag, still looking like she expected someone to realize she didn't belong and throw her out. Marcus wanted to tell her that he understood that feeling, that even now, with more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes, he sometimes felt like an imposter in expensive hotels and exclusive restaurants. But he sensed that Elena needed to process this experience at her own pace, in her own way. The suite was magnificent, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan and furnishings that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. Elena walked slowly through the living area, her bare feet sinking into carpet so thick it felt like walking on clouds. She stopped in front of the windows, staring out at the city lights reflecting on the water like scattered diamonds. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Marcus joined her at the window, following her gaze to the panoramic view spread below them. "It is," he agreed. "But you know what I think is really beautiful? The fact that you've survived everything life has thrown at you and you're still here, still fighting, still capable of appreciating beauty when you see it." Elena turned to look at him, and Marcus saw something shift in her expression. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked less like a hunted animal and more like the teenager she actually was. "Your room is through that door," Marcus said. pointing to one of the bedroom suites. It has its own bathroom, and I've arranged for some clothes to be brought up in about an hour. They'll have everything you need, including shoes and whatever else you might want. In the meantime, why don't you take a shower, get warm, and I'll order some food. Elena hesitated at the bedroom doorway. What kind of food? Marcus smiled. What's your favorite? I haven't had a favorite in a long time, Elena admitted. Favorites are for people who get to choose. Well, tonight you get to choose. Marcus said. Italian, Chinese, Mexican, steak, pizza, whatever you want. The kitchen here can make it happen. Elena was quiet for a moment, considering. Could I have a cheeseburger? A real one, with fries and maybe a milkshake? Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Of all the gourmet options available in one of Chicago's finest hotels, this 15-year-old girl who had been living on scraps and moldy sandwiches wanted a simple cheeseburger. It was such a fundamentally teenage request, such a normal desire, that it highlighted just how abnormal her circumstances had been. You can have the best cheeseburger in Chicago, Marcus promised. How do you like it cooked? However it comes, Elena said quickly. I'm not picky. Tonight you can be picky, Marcus said firmly. Tonight you can be as picky as you want about everything. Elena's smile was small but genuine. Medium rare, then. With bacon if they have it. And cheese. Lots of cheese. One cheeseburger with bacon and lots of cheese, coming right up, Marcus said, reaching for his phone. Go get warm, Elena. Take as long as you want in that shower. Use all the hot water you need. After Elena disappeared into the bedroom, Marcus sank into one of the suite's plush armchairs and ran his hands through his damp hair. The adrenaline of the encounter was beginning to wear off, replaced by a complex mix of emotions he wasn't entirely sure how to process. Relief that Elena had trusted him enough to accept help. Rage at the circumstances that had put her in danger. Determination to make sure she never found herself in such a situation again. He placed the room service order, requesting not just Elena's cheeseburger, but a selection of other items as well. Fresh fruit, soup, salad, dessert. He had no idea what she might be craving after days of near starvation, and he wanted to make sure she had options. He also called the hotel's concierge, arranging for a doctor to be on standby in case Elena needed medical attention she was reluctant to request. From the bedroom came the sound of running water, and Marcus felt a small measure of satisfaction knowing that Elena was finally warm and safe. It was a start, at least. The first step in what he suspected would be a long journey toward helping this remarkable young woman reclaim her life. His phone buzzed with a text message from his assistant, reminding him about the Tokyo call he had missed. Marcus glanced at the message and then deleted it without responding. There would be other calls, other deals, other opportunities to make money. But there would never be another chance to be present for Elena in this moment, to show her that she mattered enough for someone to choose her over everything else demanding their attention. The clothes arrived first, delivered by a personal shopper who had clearly been briefed on the situation. She presented Marcus with several options in what she estimated was Elena's size, everything from casual jeans and sweaters to more formal dresses, along with undergarments, shoes, and basic toiletries. Marcus approved everything, adding a warm jacket and comfortable sneakers to the order. Room service arrived shortly after, wheeled in on a cart that looked like it belonged in a five-star restaurant. The cheeseburger was a work of art, thick and juicy with perfectly melted cheese and crispy bacon, accompanied by fries that were golden brown and still steaming. Marcus arranged everything on the dining table, trying to make it look casual and not overwhelming. Elena emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, wrapped in the hotel's plush terry cloth robe, her dark hair clean and shining, her skin pink from the hot water. She looked younger somehow, more fragile without the armor of dirt and exhaustion, but also more alive than she had on the street. Feel better? Marcus asked. I didn't realize how cold I was until I got warm, Elena said, pulling the robe tighter around herself, or how tired I was until I sat down on something soft. She spotted the food on the table and froze. Is all that for me? All for you, Marcus confirmed. though I might steal a French fry if you don't mind sharing. Elena approached the table cautiously, as if she were afraid the food might disappear if she moved too quickly. When she picked up the cheeseburger, Marcus saw her hands shake slightly. She took a small bite, then a larger one, then suddenly, she was eating with the focused intensity of someone who hadn't had a proper meal in days. Marcus sat quietly, pretending to check his phone while actually watching to make sure Elena didn't make herself sick by eating too quickly. It was a delicate balance, giving her the privacy to eat without shame while staying alert for any signs that she needed medical attention. "This is the best burger I've ever had," Elena said around a mouthful of food. "I'm glad you like it," Marcus said. "The chef here is amazing. He actually trained in Paris before coming to Chicago." Elena paused. Mid-chew. "This was made by a real chef? Like someone famous?" "Someone very talented," Marcus confirmed. "But talent is just one ingredient. The most important ingredient in any dish is caring about the person you're cooking for." Elena considered this while working her way through. "The fries. Is that why your restaurants are successful? Because you care about your customers?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, impressed by her perceptiveness. "That's exactly why they're successful. You can have the best ingredients in the world, the most skilled chefs, the most beautiful dining rooms, but if you don't genuinely care about giving people an experience that makes them feel valued and welcome, you're just running a cafeteria." "What's your favorite restaurant?" Elena asked. "Of all the ones you own." Marcus thought for a moment. "There's a little place in Brooklyn called Chin's Garden. It was the first restaurant I bought after I made enough money to expand beyond food trucks. It's not fancy, it doesn't have any Michelin stars, but it serves the kind of food that makes people feel like they're eating at their grandmother's house. The customers know each other's names, the servers remember how everyone likes their coffee, and nobody leaves hungry." "That sounds nice," Elena said wistfully. "I don't think I've ever been anywhere like that." "Then we'll have to make sure you get to experience it," Marcus said. "But first, we need to talk about what happens next." Elena's body tensed slightly, her guard going back up. "What do you mean?" Marcus chose his words carefully, understanding that this conversation would determine whether Elena continued to trust him or decided to disappear back into the streets. "I mean that tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up safe and rested and fed, and you're going to have choices. Real choices about what direction you want your life to go. But before we can talk about those choices, I need to know more about your situation." Elena set down her half-eaten burger, her appetite apparently diminished by the turn in conversation. "What do you want to know?" "Let's start with the basics," Marcus said gently. "Do you have any other family besides your mother and stepfather? Grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone who might be willing to help?" Elena shook her head. "My dad died when I was 8. Car accident. My mom's parents died before I was born, and my dad's family, they never approved of my mom. They said she trapped him into marriage by getting pregnant with me." Marcus felt another surge of protective anger on Elena's behalf. "What about school? Were you enrolled somewhere before you left home?" "Lincoln High," Elena said. "I was a sophomore. I had pretty good grades, too. Not straight A's or anything, but mostly B's. I liked English and history. Math was harder for me, but I was getting better at it." "Do you want to go back to school?" Marcus asked. Elena's expression was complex, mixing hope with skepticism. "I want a lot of things. I want to graduate. I want to go to college. I want to have a normal life where I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep or whether someone's going to hurt me. But wanting something and being able to have it are two different things." Marcus leaned forward, his expression intense. "Elena, what if I told you that you could have all of those things? What if I told you that money doesn't have to be an obstacle, that safety doesn't have to be a luxury, that education and opportunity and a normal teenage life don't have to be dreams, but could be your reality?" Elena stared at him, her gray eyes searching his face for signs of deception or false hope. "I'd say that sounds too good to be true, and I'd wonder what you expected from me in return." Marcus nodded, appreciating her caution even as it saddened him. "I expected that response, and it's smart of you to be skeptical. But here's what I'm proposing, with no strings attached, No expectations, no hidden agenda. He pulled out his phone and opened his notes app, wanting to make sure he presented his offer clearly and completely. First, I want to set up a trust fund for you. Not a small one, but enough to cover your living expenses, education, healthcare, everything you need to build a stable life. The money would be managed by an independent trustee, someone whose only job is to make sure your needs are met and your future is secure. Elena's eyes widened, but she remained silent, clearly struggling to process what she was hearing. Marcus continued, "Second, I want to arrange for you to live somewhere safe while you finish high school. Not with a foster family, not in a group home, but in your own apartment with whatever support system you need. You'd have independence, but also backup, privacy, but also safety." "Why?" Elena whispered. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, gathering his thoughts. "Do you know what it's like to lie awake at night wondering if you could have done more to save someone you loved? Do you know what it feels like to have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes, but to know that all the wealth in the world couldn't bring back the one person who mattered most?" Elena shook her head, but her expression had softened. "I had a sister," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "Carmen. She was 2 years younger than me, and she was the kindest, most generous person I've ever known. When we were living on the streets, she would give away half her food to other kids who were hungrier. When we finally got into a foster home, she spent her allowance buying gifts for the other children." Marcus paused, struggling with memories that still felt raw even after all these years. When Carmen was 15, almost exactly your age, she was placed with a family that seemed perfect on paper. Nice house, good neighborhood, sterling references from social services. But the foster father, he had interests that weren't mentioned in his background check. Elena's face paled, understanding immediately where the story was heading. Carmen tried to tell her caseworker, tried to tell teachers at school, tried to tell anyone who would listen. But he was a respected member of the community, and she was just another troubled foster kid with a history of behavioral problems. No one believed her. Marcus's hands clenched into fists as he continued. "I was aging out of the system by then, working 3 jobs trying to save enough money to get us our own place. I was so focused on the future, on building something better for us, that I didn't see how much she was suffering in the present. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late." Elena reached across the table and touched Marcus's hand, a gesture of comfort that spoke volumes about her character despite everything she had endured. "What happened to her?" "She couldn't live with it anymore," Marcus said simply. "She decided that the world was too cruel, that people were too willing to look the other way, that justice was a luxury reserved for people who mattered more than she did. She was wrong about all of that, but I failed to show her she was wrong before she made her final decision." Tears were running down Elena's cheeks now, and Marcus felt his own eyes burning. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I made Carmen a promise at her funeral," Marcus said. "I promised that if I ever had the power to make sure another kid like her didn't fall through the cracks, I would use it. I've been waiting 15 years for the opportunity to keep that promise." Elena was quiet for a long time, processing everything Marcus had told her. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady despite her tears. "You really mean it, don't you? About the money and the apartment and everything." "I really mean it," Marcus confirmed. "But more than that, Elena, I want you to understand that this isn't charity. This is an investment in someone I believe has incredible potential. This is me betting that you're going to do something amazing with your life. And I want to make sure you have the tools you need to make that happen." Elena wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her robe. "What if I'm not amazing? What if I'm just ordinary? What if you're wrong about my potential?" Marcus smiled through his own tears. "Then you'll be ordinary in safety and comfort and dignity, which is more than most people in this world ever get." "But Elena, I've met a lot of people in my life, and I've learned to recognize strength when I see it. You survived 4 days on the street at 15 years old. You maintained your dignity in circumstances that would have broken most adults. You trusted a stranger enough to accept help, but you were smart enough to set boundaries and ask questions. You have good instincts, you're resilient, you're intelligent, and you care about other people even when you have every reason to care only about yourself. Elena looked down at her hands, clearly overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything tonight, Marcus said gently. But I do need you to make me one promise. Elena looked up at him warily. What kind of promise? Promise me that you won't disappear, Marcus said. Promise me that even if you decide you don't want my help, you won't go back to the streets. Promise me that you'll at least let me connect you with other resources, other people who can help you find a safe situation. Elena nodded slowly. I promise. But can I ask you something? Anything. If you had met Carmen when she was my age, if you had been able to help her then, do you think she would have made a different choice? Marcus felt the question like a physical blow. It was something he had wondered about countless times, something that haunted his dreams and colored every decision he made. I think Carmen needed someone to believe in her worth when she couldn't believe in it herself. I think she needed someone to show her that her life mattered, that her pain was valid, that her future was worth fighting for. I think if she had known that someone was willing to invest in her, to bet on her, to stand by her no matter what, she might have found the strength to keep going. Elena was quiet for another long moment. Okay, she said finally. Okay, what? Okay, I'll let you help me. But I have conditions. Marcus couldn't help but smile at her negotiating spirit. I'm listening. First, I want to earn it somehow. I don't want to just take your money without giving anything back. Maybe I can work in one of your restaurants, or help with your foundation, or something. I need to feel like I'm contributing. Agreed, Marcus said immediately. In fact, I was hoping you'd want to be involved with the foundation. We're always looking for people who understand what it's like to need help. Second, Elena continued, I want to meet Mrs. Chun. If she's the reason you became who you are, I want to thank her. Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. Even in her lowest moment, Elena was thinking about gratitude and connection. She would love to meet you, and I guarantee you'll love her. Third, and this is really important, Elena said, her voice taking on a serious tone. If we do this, if you really help me change my life, I want you to know that someday I'm going to help someone else the same way. I'm going to pass it on. Marcus felt tears threatening again. Elena, that's exactly what Carmen would have done if she'd had the chance. That's exactly the kind of person she was. Elena smiled, and for the first time since Marcus had met her, it was a smile full of hope rather than wariness. Then maybe this is her way of keeping her own promise. The next morning brought sunshine streaming through the hotel windows, painting everything in warm golden light. Elena woke in the most comfortable bed she had ever experienced, wearing soft pajamas that actually fit, with a full stomach and hope blooming in her chest for the first time in years. Marcus had kept every promise, arranged every detail, and shown her that sometimes miracles came disguised as ordinary kindness from extraordinary people. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.